the boss who tried to fire me, but he never checked who owned the company, and when the emergency meeting began, his power crumbled before everyone. The man who called me replaceable had no idea I owned the company he worked for. That thought has been circling in my head since dawn, quiet but sharp, like the edge of a blade hidden beneath silk. 9 years. That's how long I've walked these halls at Halixian Tech. 9 years of surviving storms that should have sunk us, 3 brutal restructurings, 2 CEOs who promised reinvention, and a global crisis that nearly bled us dry. Through it all, I stayed, not because I craved power or applause, but because this company was worth saving. What no one knows, what I never told a soul outside one trusted ally, is that when Halixian stood on the cliff's edge, I didn't just watch, I jumped with it. The night our former CEO begged for emergency capital to prevent a hostile takeover, I wired everything I had, every cent of the inheritance my grandmother left me. In exchange, I became the majority shareholder. 51% of this company runs on my name, buried under the quiet shell of Quinn Holdings. No spotlight, no title grab, just survival. And then Nathan Cole arrived. He swept in like a headline, Stanford MBA, perfect suit, voice tuned for investor calls, the kind of man who speaks in bullet points and thinks leadership means clearing the board for himself. From the first meeting, he made his mission clear. Halixian was bloated, stale, in desperate need of bold vision. His grin was flawless, so was his arrogance. I watched him the way you watch a match near gasoline, too confident to realize the floor beneath him was soaked. He didn't ask questions. He didn't listen. He just carved through the org chart like a man pruning a tree he didn't plant, calling it growth. This morning, an email slid into my inbox like a whisper before the storm, executive town hall to strategic changes announcement. I scanned the agenda twice. Nathan's name at the top, his hand-picked deputies listed below, not mine. 9 years of building, protecting, saving, and I'd been erased from the stage. The calm inside me wasn't peace, it was pressure, the kind that holds before it breaks. And when it does, someone is going to learn the difference between authority and ownership. I remember the sound before I saw him, the sharp clap of polished shoes against marble, echoing like a drumbeat announcing war. When the double doors opened, Nathan Cole walked in as if the floor had been built for him, dark navy suit, slim tie, the kind of posture you see in glossy leadership ads. His smile had edges. "Change is coming," he said, voice amplified by the mic and his own self-assurance. The room of 100 employees hushed, not out of awe but calculation, everyone wondering who would be on the chopping block. I stayed in my usual spot at the back, hands folded, face unreadable. From here, I could watch without being seen. That's what people like Nathan never understand. Real power doesn't need a spotlight. He started his presentation with words like agility and optimization, flashing slides that glittered with metrics and buzzwords. Then came his signature move, a phrase I would hear too many times that day: "Let me simplify this for you." Every time he said it, a small spark lit in my chest, not anger, something colder. Simplify, as if the people who kept this company alive through 3 restructurings and a global meltdown were too dense to grasp his genius, as if experience had expired. The room nodded politely, scribbling notes they'd forget by lunch, but I watched faces, tight jaws, dropped eyes, people sensing a storm but praying it would pass over their desk. After the meeting, I slipped out before the applause faded. That's when I heard it. His voice carried down the glass hallway, smooth and sharp like a blade. "She's a relic," he told his assistant, tone casual like ordering coffee. "Easy to phase out." I froze. I didn't need to ask who, my gut already knew. I kept walking, steady, not letting the tremor inside reach my heels. If Nathan thought I was a relic, he had never seen a storm trapped behind glass. The next day, his email arrived: company-wide executive town hall follow-up, aligning for growth. Attached was a PDF of his proposed org chart. I clicked it open, eyes tracing lines of power, boxes stacked like a pyramid built to his ego, names I knew, names I didn't, and then the absence, mine. 9 years, 3 CEOs, millions saved through systems I built, gone with one slide and a man who thought bullet points made him invincible. I stared at the screen, calm on the surface, but something in me coiled tight, like a wire pulled past its breaking point. He wanted a leaner Halixian. He would get one. He just didn't know who was holding the knife. The email hit my inbox like a stone dropped in still water. Subject: Conference Room B, now. No greeting, no context, just 6 words that carried the weight of a loaded gun. I closed my laptop slowly, slipped on my blazer, and stood. The hallway outside my office stretched long and silent. Every click of my heels echoed against marble. It felt like walking toward something inevitable. Like the first roll of thunder before a storm you can't outrun. Conference room B was already closed when I arrived. The blinds were drawn tight, cutting out the winter sun. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a cold glow across the table. Nathan sat at the head like a king surveying a pawn he'd grown tired of. Arms rested on the polished wood, fingers steepled, head bent toward a folder he didn't bother to look up from. "Have a seat," he said, voice flat. I lowered myself into the chair opposite him, calm on the surface but alert beneath. He didn't waste time. "I've been reviewing your department's output," he began, finally lifting his eyes to mine. "Frankly, I'm not impressed." My pulse slowed, not sped. "Not impressed," I repeated softly. He leaned back, letting the words unspool like a verdict. "You've plateaued, Mara. The tools you've built are outdated, and your team lacks initiative. We're trying to move forward. But you—" His pause was deliberate, sharp enough to cut. "You're replaceable." Replaceable. The word landed like a stone in my chest, heavy but hollow. He thought that would break me. He thought those syllables could undo 9 years of building, saving, sacrificing. Instead, I smiled, just a flicker at the corner of my mouth, but enough to pull his brows together. "You find this amusing?" he asked, irritation cracking the veneer of his calm. "No," I said lightly. "I find it funny you're being serious." Color rose to his face. "If you think this is a joke, maybe you'd prefer to leave. We can formalize that today." I leaned in then, close enough to watch his confidence falter. "Then fire me," I said, voice even, almost soft. The silence that followed stretched like glass about to shatter. For the first time since he walked into this company, Nathan Cole looked unsure. His mouth opened, then closed again, words swallowed whole. I stood without waiting for dismissal, smoothing the sleeve of my blazer as I walked to the door. He thought this was the end game. He had no idea it was only the opening move. The office felt quieter than usual when I returned from that meeting, as if even the walls had overheard what was said. Replaceable. The word still echoed, not as a wound but as a warning bell. I closed my door, let the latch click shut, and sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor reflecting a face that looked calmer than it should have. I didn't pace. I didn't rage. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Evelyn Strauss." A steady voice answered after 2 rings. "It's me," I said, tone even. There was a pause, the kind that carries weight. "What happened?" "He tried to dress it up as feedback," I replied, resting my elbow on the desk. "But let's call it what it was. A warning shot. He wants me out." Evelyn sighed, a sound like paper sliding across a table. "That doesn't surprise me. What does is this." Her voice tightened. "I reviewed the board packet for Monday's strategy session. There's a proposal in there from Nathan." My spine straightened. "Go on. He's recommending we transition your role to an external advisory position." She paused, letting the words land. In other words, off the board, off the org chart. I stared at the skyline through the glass, the city lights flickering like distant signals. He submitted that without even speaking to me. "Of course he did," Evelyn said flatly. "And here's the kicker. He marked one line as pending shareholder approval." The corner of my mouth curved, slow and sharp. "Pending," I repeated, almost tasting the irony. "Yes," she confirmed. "He has no idea who he's waiting on." For the first time since that cold meeting, a laugh slipped from my throat. Quiet, controlled, like the sound of a lock turning. "And I'm not telling him." Evelyn chuckled once, low. "That's what I thought you'd say." "I want him to walk into that boardroom certain of his victory," I said, my voice cooling to steel. "I want him to feel the ground under his feet right before it gives way." "Then I'll keep this quiet," Evelyn replied. "You just be ready." "Oh, I'm ready," I murmured, my eyes fixed on the reflection in the glass. For weeks I'd stayed silent, watching him build his little empire on assumptions. But the thing about assumptions, they crumble fast when reality hits. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled like his had been. The game had changed, and the man who thought I was a relic was about to learn what history does to men who underestimate it. The boardroom was already half full when I walked in. The hum of low voices echoed off glass walls. Morning sunlight slanted through the blinds, striping the long mahogany table in sharp lines. I took my usual seat near the far end, quiet, unremarkable. That was the point. Nathan arrived minutes later, all confidence and cologne, the kind of man who thought timing was power. He strode to the head of the table, shook hands like a politician, and launched into his performance before the chair cushions had time to settle. "Good morning," he began, voice warm, rehearsed. "I'd like to walk you through a vision, a leaner, stronger Halixian tech." Slides flickered across the screen behind him, bold fonts, buzzwords stacked like a fortress. Efficiency, agility, growth. Each chart climbed higher than the last, his tone rising with them. He was in his element, selling change like salvation. Then came the last slide, the one that made the air thicken. Transition Mara Quinn to an external advisory role, duties redistributed to more agile junior staff. My name hung in the air like a verdict. A few board members shifted, their expressions carefully neutral. The chairman's voice cut through the silence. "Before we proceed, shareholder approval is required for structural changes at that level. Do you have it?" Nathan nodded, smooth as ever. "Pending, but no issue." That was my cue. "Actually," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle, "there is an issue." Every head turned, even Nathan's smile froze mid-performance. "I don't approve." He blinked, then laughed softly, like I'd made a joke. "Mara, with all due respect, you don't have the authority to—" I reached into my folder and slid a document across the polished wood, stopping just in front of the chairman. "You might want to check that." Evelyn, seated 2 chairs down, leaned forward. "Verified and current," she said, her tone clinical. "Mara Quinn is the majority shareholder through Quinn Holdings, 51%. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the faint hum of the projector. Nathan's face drained of color, his composure cracking at the edges. I didn't know," he stammered. I tilted my head, voice steady as glass. "That's the problem, Nathan. You never asked." The chairman leaned back slowly, eyes scanning the paper like it held a bomb. Around the table, the air shifted, gravity tilting, power realigning without a sound. And for the first time since he arrived, Nathan Cole understood the kingdom he thought he'd conquered wasn't his to rule. Whispers travel faster than emails. By the time I returned to my floor, the air felt different, thinner, like everyone was holding their breath. Conversations hushed when I walked past. Eyes that used to meet mine now slid away. Careful, cautious, gratitude, fear, maybe both. In places like this, power shifts are earthquakes. People survive by not standing too close to the fault line. I kept my expression neutral as I settled at my desk, though inside the silence pressed in like cold glass. This wasn't celebration, it was isolation. For days, Nathan didn't confront me. No fiery speeches, no slam doors. Instead, the retaliation came quiet, precise, and deliberate. First, my team lost access to 2 core dashboards, tools we'd used for years. Streamlining, he claimed. Next, my calendar changed. A client meeting I'd led for 3 consecutive quarters vanished, the invite now showing a name from Nathan's inner circle. "Better alignment," his assistant chirped. I didn't push. Not yet. This was Nathan's new game, not removing me outright, just eroding the edges, hoping I'd crumble before anyone noticed. Death by subtraction. I logged every incident in a private file, dates, times, screenshots. I wasn't reacting, I was recording. Because if he thought silence meant surrender, he had miscalculated. Late Thursday, as the office emptied and shadows stretched across the glass, a notification pinged on my screen. Internal message. No sender listed. Just words on a gray background, thank you. "You don't know me, but you stopped him." I stared at it, my pulse ticking slow and steady. Then another line appeared. He did this at his last company. 3 women left because of him. I read it twice, the letters burning like a match in the dark. This wasn't just ambition. This was a pattern. A predator cloaked in performance metrics and charm. I typed nothing in response. Just closed the message, saving a screenshot before it vanished. Outside my office, the city lights glimmered against the night, cold and far away. Alone in that silence, I understood something with startling clarity. Nathan wasn't done, and neither was I. If he wanted a war built on whispers, he had chosen the wrong opponent. I would fight him with receipts, not rumors. And when the reckoning came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be surgical. The email wasn't meant for me, that was the first sign. It appeared in my inbox late Monday night, forwarded from an address I didn't recognize. No subject, no message, just an attached screenshot. The header made my stomach turn. From Nathan Cole to board distribution, subject leadership concerns. The words beneath were as sharp as broken glass. Mara shows signs of disengagement. Missed multiple strategic meetings, increasingly uncooperative, recommend further review of leadership viability. Each line was a surgical cut, calculated, bloodless, and aimed to kill without leaving fingerprints. I read it twice, my pulse steady only because it had no room to climb. A single sentence in small gray text sat below the screenshot, written by the anonymous sender. "You didn't get this from me." I stared at the screen, cold sliding down my spine like water in a dark stairwell. Nathan wasn't coming for me head-on. He was rewriting me word by word until I disappeared in plain sight. For a moment, the office felt too quiet, like a stage before the curtain rises. I drew a slow breath and opened a blank document titled Defense File. Every move from here had to count. I started pulling data, timestamps of canceled meetings, screenshots of revoked access, every executive directive that conveniently aligned with my supposed absence. I clipped them into folders labeled by date. Evidence doesn't blink. Evidence doesn't forget. Then I placed my phone face up on the desk and hit record before calling IT support for the third time that week, my voice even, every word measured. When I hung up, I saved the file to an encrypted drive. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was protocol. By Wednesday, the quiet pressure had thickened into something suffocating. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Invitations I used to receive without question vanished from my calendar. And then came the twist that turned unease into something colder. A junior analyst I'd mentored years ago slipped a folded note under my office door. No name, just 8 words scrawled in ink. "Check Nathan's calendar for Friday. Ethics prep." I logged in through the shared portal, my hands steady though the air around me seemed to hum. And there it was. A private meeting titled Board Strategy, Leadership Realignment. Guests, Nathan Cole, 2 committee members, and 1 line that made the intent clear: finalize exit recommendation. Not a conversation, not a review. A verdict dressed in corporate language. I closed the tab slowly, letting the silence settle like frost. He thought he was hunting me in the dark. He had no idea I'd been building my own map of every trap he laid. And the day he thought I'd fall into it, the ground was going to give way beneath him. By Thursday morning, the decision was made. Not his, not theirs, mine. I walked into the chairman's office carrying a black leather folder, the weight of it solid in my hands. Evelyn was already seated, calm as a chess player in mid-game. The chairman glanced up, expression unreadable, as I closed the door behind me with a soft click. "Morning," I said evenly, placing the folder on the table between us. "This won't take long." Inside that folder wasn't outrage or theory, it was proof. I slid the first set of documents across the polished wood, screenshots of revoked access logs, time-stamped cancellations, calendar reshuffles that stripped me from meetings I was expected to attend. Then came the email Nathan had sent the board, accusing me of disengagement. Highlighted, annotated, dated. The chairman's brows lowered, his fingers steepling as I continued. That's not all. Next came the voice memos, recorded calls where IT confirmed changes came from executive directive. I pressed play on one, letting the tiny speaker fill the silence. "Yes, Miss Quinn, that restriction was placed by senior operations." His eyes flicked to Evelyn, who nodded once. "We've reviewed chain of command protocols," she said coolly. "Everything traces back to Nathan's office." But I wasn't finished. From the folder's back pocket, I pulled a thinner stack. Employee statements, anonymous but detailed, descriptions of sudden demotions, whispered threats, quiet pressure to leave. Each one a mirror of the tactics he'd used on me. When the last page slid into place, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the air vent. The chairman exhaled slowly. "You've handled this with restraint." "I'm not here to burn bridges," I replied, my tone like glass, clear, hard. "I'm here to protect what I built and to stop him from doing this to anyone else." He leaned back, decision settling into his voice. "We'll convene an ethics committee meeting, formal review. He'll present his case and so will you." "Good," I said simply, rising to leave. But as I reached for my folder, something else caught my eye. A small, unmarked flash drive tucked inside the lining. Evelyn must have slipped it in. She gave the faintest nod. Later, in the privacy of my office, I plugged it in. One audio file, Nathan's voice sharp with arrogance. "She won't last Q1. I replayed it twice, the words curling like smoke around every syllable. This wasn't speculation. It was intent, cold, undeniable, and fatal to his case. I saved it to my encrypted drive, labeling it in bold final move. When the meeting came, Nathan would walk in thinking he was holding the sword. He wouldn't realize the blade had already been turned, pointed straight at him. The room felt too bright. Sunlight spilled across the polished table, making everything gleam. Too clean for what was about to happen. 12 chairs, 10 filled. The ethics committee sat in rigid silence as Nathan Cole strode in, smile polished to perfection, confidence wrapped tight around him like armor. "Thank you for your time," he began smoothly, voice carrying that well-oiled charm that had fooled so many. "I believe what we're facing here is simple operational misalignment. A clash of working styles, nothing more." He paused, letting his gaze sweep the room like a spotlight. "Heliction needs agility. My role is to ensure efficiency, and unfortunately certain individuals have taken structural decisions personally." His eyes brushed past me as if I were wallpaper. "Mara Quinn has been an asset," he continued, tone dropping to something softer, almost regretful. "But over the past month she's disengaged from key projects, resisted collaboration, and created tension across teams. This isn't about misconduct. It's about progress." When he finished, the silence was deliberate. He leaned back, folding his hands like a man confident the verdict was his. I didn't speak immediately. I wanted the quiet to stretch, wanted him to feel it press against his skin. Then, softly, "If this is about facts, let's start there." I opened the folder in front of me and began sliding documents across the table one by one. "Here's a timeline of every meeting Nathan claims I missed, each one canceled or reassigned under his directive. Next, screenshots of revoked system access, emails with timestamps, call logs confirming the source of every restriction." "Those aren't opinions," I said, my voice steady as ice. "They're records." Then I reached for the flash drive. "Ah, and this," I continued, plugging it into the speaker system, "is Nathan recorded 2 weeks ago." His voice filled the sterile room, cold and clipped. "She won't last Q1. A ripple passed through the committee, subtle but sharp. I didn't look at him yet, not until Evelyn spoke. "HR logs confirm multiple policy breaches tied to these directives," she said crisply. This wasn't strategy, it was targeted. Something cracked then, not in the room, but in Nathan. His composure shattered like glass under pressure. He lurched forward, voice rising. "This is a setup. You all let her trap me." I finally met his eyes, calm as water. "No," I said, quiet enough to make him strain to hear. "You set this up the day you underestimated me." The chairman stood, his voice final. "Effective immediately, Nathan Cole is suspended pending termination review. Security will escort you out." Nathan's face was a storm of disbelief as 2 guards approached. For once, there were no speeches, no charm, just silence and the sound of his world collapsing. Nathan didn't leave with headlines or farewell speeches. There was no company-wide memo praising his visionary leadership, no champagne send-off in the glass atrium he loved so much. He simply vanished, a name wiped from the directory, a shadow erased from the walls. And in the silence that followed, something unexpected happened. People started to breathe again. Conversations sounded less rehearsed. Laughter returned to break rooms like sunlight slipping past a storm. No one said it out loud, but we all felt it, the shift. 2 days later, the board called me in. This time, no cold summons, no blinds drawn tight like a trap, just the chairman standing as I entered, extending an envelope across the polished table. My name embossed in gold. I opened it slowly. Appointment. Executive Director of Strategic Operations. For a moment, I didn't move. Titles had never been my pursuit. They were noise, distractions from the work that actually mattered. I looked up. "If I accept this," I said quietly, "it won't be business as usual." The chairman's brows lifted. "What do you need?" 3 things, I replied, my voice steady. 1. A new code of ethical leadership, non-negotiable. 2. Every team member Nathan sidelined gets a voice in rebuilding their departments. And 3, I paused, letting the weight of the last condition settle. "We don't bury what happened, we learn from it." He nodded without hesitation. "Done." By the next morning, my office felt different. Not larger, just lighter. No invisible hand tugging at my chair, no whispers plotting exits on the glass wall outside. I replaced Nathan's old nameplate with one of my own making. Integrity is not optional. Simple words, but in them a manifesto. I stood there for a long moment, fingers resting against the cool glass, remembering the path that brought me here. The nights I stayed when others walked out. The check I wrote to save a company that didn't even know my name. the silence I endured when arrogance mistook itself for authority. Power isn't about shouting in meetings. It isn't about pounding fists or flooding slides with buzzwords. It's about patience, about precision, about knowing when to let the noise run its course and when to strike so quietly the echo lasts longer than any applause. As I turned back to my desk, the city skyline burned gold in the morning light. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like possibility. Because storms don't announce themselves with trumpets. They gather in silence, coil in shadows, and when they break, everything changes. Power isn't about shouting in meetings. It's about being the quiet storm no one sees coming until it's too late. When I look back at everything that happened, one truth stands out. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is the one no one sees coming. For weeks, I let him believe he was winning while I built my case piece by piece. Because real power isn't about shouting in meetings. It's about clarity, integrity, and refusing to let someone else write your story. If you're facing your own battle right now, at work, in life, remember this. You don't have to match their noise. You don't have to bend to their version of who you are. Stay steady. Document everything. Know your worth even when others try to bury it. Because one day that quiet strength becomes the loudest victory.